Nolan Wells' official autopsy is complete.
Justice for our black children.
Justice for our black children.
Justice for our black children.
My son was to graduate in May. He was unable to graduate because the two boys murdered my son. They said my son jumped off a bridge, and I know that's not the truth. He was found in water. And not only that, my son was on the swim team. He was very comfortable with swimming in the pool, swimming in lakes. The autopsy report shows my son had an unobstructed airway. So my son did not drown.
The disrespect that's been coming toward my wife and my family, for any parent, no matter what race you are, they need time to grieve. A parent can't grieve when you have people attacking them, attacking their jobs, attacking their character.
When the physician came out and pronounced my grandson, and she stated self-inflicted, accidental, I told her, you're a lie, and there is no truth in it. I explained to her immediately. I said, how do you have this evidence for you to know this? She said, because they said. I said, they said? She said, yes.
We're going to get justice for Nolan Wells. We're going to get justice for Daniel Irving. And we're going to get justice for Tyler Smith. They're attacking Reverend Al. They're attacking the parents of Nolan Wells. We don't care about those distractions. We ain't no ways tired.
Photographs on a stage in Nashville. 3 mothers and grandmothers who had never met each other before this summer, who had no reason to, who lived in 3 different states, hundreds of miles apart, and would have gone their entire lives without knowing the others existed. And then, all 3 of their sons died within 3 months of each other. Somewhere in Mississippi right now, there is a document that answers the question Christine Wells Wansley has been asking since the 4th of July. It is finished, it is signed, it sits in a file, and she is not allowed to read it. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner completed Nolan Wells' autopsy report. Officials confirmed it to NBC News on Thursday. Not a rumor, not a leak, confirmed. The single most important document in this entire investigation now exists in its final form, and the public can't see it, the press can't see it, and the mother who buried him can't see it either. That's the update everyone's been waiting almost a month for, and it arrived in the exact same week Ben Crump walked onto a stage in Tennessee and did something nobody expected. He didn't come alone. He brought 2 other families with him, and he put their sons' photographs next to Nolan's. Now here's what almost nobody covering this story has actually stopped to count. Across these 3 cases, across Mississippi, Texas, and Kentucky, there are now 3 arrests on the books. 3 teenagers dead, 3 arrests made, and not one of them is for killing anybody. Stay with me on that number, because it does not distribute the way you think it does. When you see how those 3 arrests actually break down across these 3 states, it changes what this story is about. It's not what you'd guess. And the case with the most national attention, the biggest reward fund in the country right now, and a finished autopsy sitting in a prosecutor's office. That case has the strangest arrest record of all 3. We'll get there. But you need the other 2 first, because you can't understand what's missing until you see what's present. 3 cases, 3 states, 3 families who found each other. Let's get into it. A lot of work, and most of that work is being misunderstood. Completed does not mean released. It doesn't mean the family has it. It doesn't mean the sheriff has held a press conference. It means a pathologist finished writing, signed the document, and handed it up the chain. From there, it goes to a grand jury. And the grand jury, not the medical examiner, not the sheriff, not the district attorney standing at a podium, will be the body that decides whether anyone in Jackson County, Mississippi, faces criminal charges in the death of Nolan Xavier Wells. District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath addressed this directly in a video released on the 23rd of July. Her explanation was procedural, not personal. She said that every death in the county except natural causes and non-criminal car wrecks gets presented to a grand jury, and she said that's how her office has handled death investigations for her entire career. That's the argument. This isn't special treatment. This isn't a cover-up. This is the machinery working the way the machinery always works. Whether that satisfies a family that has now gone almost a month without a single confirmed answer about how their son died, that's a completely different question. And it's the question sitting underneath every conversation about this case. Because here's the part that makes it strange. There are now 2 finished autopsies on Nolan Wells. 2. The family commissioned an independent examination, and the results were announced on the 22nd of July. Cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. Pending investigation. That ruling was not a dodge. It was a statement of limits. The independent pathologist could only work with what was in front of them, and critical structures were not there to examine. The doctor who performed that examination, working out of Washington, D.C., is reportedly still trying to obtain Nolan's throat for analysis. It was not present at the time of the second autopsy. Sit with that sentence for a second. A pathologist hired to determine how an 18-year-old died is, weeks later, still trying to get access to the part of the body that would answer the question. And now, for the first time, there's a state report sitting beside that independent one. Finished, sealed, written by an examiner who had access to things the family's pathologist did not. Retained remains, witness information, the full evidentiary picture built by investigators over 3.5 weeks. 2 examinations, both complete, both invisible, one withheld to protect a grand jury process, the other released only in the pieces the family's legal team decides to release. 2 competing versions of the truth, both finished, both waiting. What we do know from the official side is narrow, but not nothing. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind previously told CNN there were no immediate signs of physical injury. The independent examinations, fractures, or deep tissue injuries either. Lind has said the coroner's office specifically requested the autopsy be done at the state medical examiner's facility because of the condition the body was found in, and to determine definitively whether there was trauma or any sign of foul play. Authorities have said from early on that they consider an accidental drowning the likely explanation. The family has never accepted that as settled. So here's the question worth asking before the grand jury ever convenes. What happens if these 2 reports agree? If 2 pathologists working separately with no coordination, no shared notes, no contact, arrive at the same conclusion, that agreement becomes evidence in itself. It's hard for anyone on either side of this case to wave away 2 independent professionals landing in the same place. And if they disagree, then the disagreement becomes the story. Immediately, which examination had access to more? Which one was working with a complete body? Which one does a grand jury weigh more heavily when it decides whether to hand up an indictment or walk away? If the state autopsy and the independent one end up contradicting each other, what do you think that does to this case? Drop your prediction in the comments. I read them. And there's one more thing happening in the background that hasn't gotten enough attention. Crump's legal team isn't just waiting. Attorney Eric Hertz is leading their investigation, and according to reporting from Mississippi, that team has brought in oceanic engineering experts. Their assignment is specific. Figure out how and why Nolan's body was recovered in essentially the same location where he was last seen. That's not a rhetorical question. Currents move things, tides move things. 2 days in the water off a barrier island in the Gulf should have produced drift. The family's experts want to know why it apparently didn't. Hertz has also said that after speaking with the district attorney, she indicated she'd be open to reviewing the evidence Crump's team has assembled. And there are ongoing discussions about something even more consequential, a joint inspection of phones connected to the case, with the FBI potentially present. Phones. Remember that word. It comes back in every single one of these 3 cases. Thursday, the release from his office framed it plainly. All 3 young men were 18-year-old black men. All three died within 3 months of each other, and in every one of the 3 cases, the family either disputes the official account of how their son died or is still waiting to be given one. Nolan Wells, Daniel Irving, Tyler Smith, Mark Morial, president of the National Urban League, stood with them and told the room that when families are facing a criminal justice system that won't respond to them, you stand with those families. Crump was careful about what he was and wasn't saying. That distinction matters more than anything else in this story, so hold on to it. He is not alleging a shared perpetrator. He is not claiming these 3 deaths are connected by a conspiracy. He is not saying one person or one group did this. 3 different states, 3 different agencies, 3 completely different sets of circumstances. A barrier island, a lake, a house on a residential street. What he's arguing is narrower, and because it's narrower, it's much harder to dismiss. His argument is about process, how quickly an official ruling gets issued, how much access a family gets to evidence about their own child, how hard investigators pushed on the first version of events they were handed, whether the initial witness accounts got tested or got accepted. That framing gives him room. He doesn't need all 3 cases to resolve identically. He doesn't need them to resolve at all. He's betting on something more defensible than a conspiracy theory, that each of these 3 investigations deserved a level of rigor that, in his assessment, none of them received. And he said one sentence in Nashville that functions as the thesis of the entire event: nobody has been held accountable in any of the 3. Now think about what it took to physically assemble that stage. Families from Mississippi, from Texas, from Kentucky, people who had never met, coordinating flights and drives, agreeing to share a spotlight, a finite one, with 2 other grieving families they'd never have encountered under any other circumstance in their lives. That's not something that happens casually. That's a decision made by people already exhausted from months of fighting alone, who calculated that 3 voices in one room carry further than 1 voice in 3 separate rooms. Even though sharing that room means sharing the attention, even though any one of those mothers, on any other day, might have wanted every camera pointed at her son alone, they chose the room. Here's the case joining this story for the first time. Tyler Smith was 18 years old, a recent graduate of Lafayette High School in Lexington, Kentucky. His uncle describes a kid he never once saw angry, always the big brother, always asking how he could help. His grandmother describes someone who was constantly moving on to the next thing, detailing cars one week, cutting lawns the next, dismantling trees after that, always climbing. And on the 4th of July, the exact same holiday that Nolan Wells disappeared, 800 miles away, Tyler was shot on Bluebonnet Drive in Lexington at around 2:36 in the morning. He died at the hospital. The Lexington Police Department classified it as a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Early reporting indicated officers initially leaned toward accidental, then determined it was self-inflicted. Tyler's death has not been listed among the homicide investigations on the Lexington Police Department's website. His family has disputed the finding from the first day. And unlike a lot of family disputes in cases like this, which often come down to instinct, or a mother's certainty, or a feeling that something is wrong, this one is anchored to a piece of paper. According to a police citation from the Lexington Police Department, officers recovered a firearm and a shell casing at the scene. Witnesses told investigators that the man police later charged had been holding a different gun than the one officers found, and a preliminary test by the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab found that the shell casing did not come from the recovered firearm. That's not interpretation. That's not a witness memory that could be shaky, or an audio clip that could be ambiguous. A casing either matches a barrel or it doesn't. Ballistics is one of the few areas of forensic work where the answer is close to binary. On the 10th of July, Lexington police arrested 20-year-old Bryce Chestnut and charged him with tampering with physical evidence. He is the only person charged in connection with Tyler Smith's death. That charge, tampering, is the entire extent of the criminal exposure anyone currently faces. His court appearance on that charge is scheduled for the 12th of August. Investigators confirmed that the gun recovered at the scene belonged to Chestnut. Tyler's family says Tyler didn't know him. Now, the part of this that has to be said, because leaving it out would mean telling you only half of a record you deserve all of. According to witness accounts reported by Kentucky outlets, the shooting happened during a game of Russian roulette. Chestnut reportedly told investigators he handed his gun to Smith, and that Smith then used it on himself. One version circulating from witnesses claims Chestnut said the gun wasn't loaded, pretended to fire it at himself first, and that Smith then picked it up and fired the single round. That is the account on the table. Those are allegations and claims, not findings. The family rejects all of it. Tyler's uncle, Trevon Petty, has raised a physical detail that he says doesn't reconcile. He says the left lens of Tyler's glasses was damaged. The gunshot wound entered through the right cheek, and the family says Tyler's phone is missing. Petty says it kept pinging to the address where Tyler was shot until the location simply stopped coming back. That's the second phone in this story. It won't be the last. Tyler's grandmother is Niecy Anderson, and what she said in Nashville had almost nothing to do with ballistics or citations or evidence chains. She described her grandson as warm cake straight out of the oven, as a buttermilk biscuit with the butter sliding across the top, as the depth of a baby's laughter. That is not language built for a courtroom. Nobody workshops a metaphor about biscuits to move a grand jury. That's a woman in the worst season of her life trying to make a room full of strangers understand that Tyler was a person, not a case number, not a disputed police classification, not a line item on somebody's caseload. And then she told them what happened when she tried to get answers. She says that when a physician came out and told her the wound was self-inflicted and accidental, she said flatly that it wasn't true. She asked how anyone could know that already. She says the answer she got was that people at the scene had said so. She says she begged the coroner's office and the police department to bag her grandson's hands to preserve gunshot residue. She says the answer she received was that there was no need, that everyone in the room would have residue on them. She says nobody at the scene was searched. She says her grandson was moved to the state facility far faster than she'd been told to expect, and that on Monday morning, the answer came back the same as it had been on day one. She and her sons spent 17 days investigating on their own. She says the police department gave them nothing. She says she was treated as though asking questions was itself suspicious. Asked why she needed to know, told in effect to accept what she'd been handed and settle down. When she spoke with the police chief, she says he asked her what she was looking for. Her answer was to ask him what he would be looking for, and then she said the line that traveled further than anything else from that stage. She said she wants transparency. She said she wants them to do the job they're paid to do. She said her family never asked anyone to go above and beyond, only to earn the paycheck, to bring the same energy to her grandson's death that gets brought into black and brown neighborhoods when it's time to investigate, interrogate, and charge. If you're following all three of these cases, subscribe to this channel. We're tracking Nolan, Daniel, and Tyler together from here on, and there are court dates coming in, every one of them.
They offered no traces of gun residue, even though I called the coroner's office and the police department. And I begged and pleaded, please, bag his hands. No child, and I say child because it's relative, no one was searched on the scene. They took an investigation as a total from all 5 of these young people and said, they said this is what happened. I asked for gun residue on anyone. The answer that I was given, well, there's no need to bag his hands. Everyone in this room would have gun residue on them. That was their excuse to me. When they moved my grandson in an expedient manner, not to our local coroner's office, but to the state capitol, which I was told wouldn't happen until that following Monday. Miraculously, in 2 hours, he was on his way to the medical examiner in the capitol. On Monday morning at 10 a.m., they came back and told me again, accidental, self-inflicted. For 17 days, my sons and I worked tirelessly investigating everything on our own.
Here's what's worth understanding about the position Tyler's family has actually taken. They aren't claiming there was no gathering. They aren't claiming a gun wasn't involved. They aren't building a theory out of nothing. They're pointing at a physical inconsistency in the state's own paperwork. Either that casing came out of that gun, or it didn't. If it genuinely didn't, that's not a matter for online argument or comment section forensics. That's a question ballistics can answer, if someone with authority actually asks it and follows the answer wherever it leads. Daniel Irving's case is further down the legal road than either of the other two, which makes it the closest thing this story has to a preview. Daniel was 18, a senior at Saxa High School in Texas. Honor roll. And this detail sits at the center of everything his mother argues. He was on the swim team. On the 13th of April, he went to Lake Ray Hubbard, near Rowlett, with 2 other people. According to investigators, the 3 of them jumped into the water from a railroad bridge near the 6300 block of Miller Road. Daniel went under and didn't come back up. His body was recovered on the 17th of April. 4 days later, the Dallas County Medical Examiner ruled his death an accidental drowning. Now here's what the arrest affidavit alleges happened in between. Investigators allege that after Daniel drowned, the 2 people with him did not call for help and did not report it. They allege that his clothes were thrown into a tree line near the bridge, that call logs and text messages were deleted from Daniel's phone, that the phone was then thrown out the window of a moving vehicle, and that both of them left the scene in a car. The affidavit states that one of them admitted to deleting messages because he was afraid of getting in trouble. The clothes were recovered during the investigation. So was the phone. On the 9th of July, nearly 3 months after Daniel died, Dallas police arrested 19-year-old Lucas Roper. A juvenile was arrested as well. Both were charged with tampering with physical evidence, a third-degree felony. Roper was granted a $10,000 bond, and within the last several days, the case moved again. A Dallas County grand jury has now indicted Roper on that tampering charge. That's the newest development in any of these 3 cases, and it's important to be precise about what it is and isn't. He has been indicted for tampering, not for causing Daniel's death. Dallas authorities have continued to say they don't currently suspect foul play in the drowning itself. The family's attorney has said additional charges remain possible as the investigation continues. Daniel's mother is Tamika Irving. She has used one phrase more than any other to describe where things stand. Partial justice. Her argument is not complicated, and that's exactly what gives it weight. She asks why anyone innocent of a crime would throw away a dead boy's clothes, delete his messages, and never call his mother. She has raised other failures too. She says it took more than 35 hours for her son's information to be entered into the state missing persons system. And she says his information was never entered into the national database at all, a step she argues law enforcement was obligated to take within 2 hours, given his age. And she has spoken about the drowning finding directly. She points out that her son swam competitively and was comfortable in pools and lakes. She has said publicly that the autopsy report showed an unobstructed airway, and that in her reading, this means her son did not drown. That's her interpretation of the report, stated at a press conference. It is not the finding of the medical examiner's office, which ruled the death an accidental drowning. Both of those things are true at the same time, and you should hold both. The family retained attorney Sean DeRedia to run an independent investigation. His framing of the case is blunt. He asks why, if this was purely an accident, the clothes were hidden, the scene was left, and the phone was thrown from a car. She's also said something smaller that tells you more about the boy than any court filing will. He went by Mike. She has said, this is a fight for Mike. Daniel's family has been at this since April. Longer than Nolan's family, longer than Tyler's. Months of court dates and press conferences and pressure on Dallas County prosecutors, and what they have to show for it is one indictment for tampering. That's the template. and it's why this case matters to the other two. Because the shape it took is replicable, the official manner of death stays accidental, and a separate, narrower set of charges attaches not to how the person died, but to what other people did afterward. If Nolan's case and Tyler's case eventually land in that same shape, it suggests something structural about how these situations get classified. Something bigger than any one family's circumstances. If you had to bet, which of these three cases reaches a real resolution first? Tell me in the comments.
Swimming in lakes. The autopsy report shows my son had an unobstructed airway. So my son did not drown. I want to know why the people that are in place to serve and protect failed to do their job from the very start. When I reported my son missing, it took them 35 hours, over 35 hours to input his information, only in the state system, showing that he was missing. They failed to enter his information in the NCIC, the National Criminal Database.
Back in Mississippi, the financial pressure on this case keeps climbing, and this week, it climbed from a direction almost nobody predicted. The reward fund for information leading to an arrest and conviction in Nolan Wells' death now stands at $175,000. Reverend Al Sharpton pledged $50,000. Tyler Perry pledged $50,000. Additional pledges from public figures brought it higher still. The exact attribution of one of those contributions has been reported differently by different outlets, so I'll leave that where it belongs, which is unresolved. What's new is where the last $50,000 came from. On Tuesday, the 29th of July, Dr. Benjamin Hudson announced he was matching Sharpton's pledge. Dr. Hudson is the father of Warren Hudson, one of the teenagers who traveled to Horn Island that day. The group went out on 3 boats. Warren was not on the same boat as Nolan. Say that part slowly because almost every version of this story online has flattened it. Dr. Hudson was explicit that his family is not accusing anyone of anything. He told TMZ that they don't know whether anyone had any involvement, but they care about Nolan and want to know what happened. He defended the teenagers on all 3 boats, and he said, plainly, that nobody still knows what happened out there. He told the Sun-Herald he was offering the money on behalf of himself and his son to get justice for the Wells family, as rumors and speculation spread. Then he said the part that should stop you. His family has received thousands of death threats. In 3 weeks. Thousands. Against a family that has not been charged with anything, that has cooperated from the beginning, and whose son wasn't even on the boat with Nolan. And Dr. Hudson made an argument about those threats that almost nobody making them has considered. He believes the threat environment has made it harder for investigators to get information, that people who might otherwise come forward are watching what happens to anyone whose name touches this case, and staying silent. The harassment is obstructing the exact thing the harassers claim to want. Think about the position he's in. His son has spent weeks being publicly dissected. His family is fielding threats serious enough to draw federal attention. The safe move, the obvious move, is to go quiet. Say nothing. Wait for the internet to find something else. Instead, he attached his name and $50,000 of his own money to accelerating the investigation. That's not the behavior of a man managing a secret. Funding a faster, more thorough search for the truth is an extraordinary risk if you believe the truth is going to land on your family. It only makes sense as the move of someone who believes the opposite. That speed helps him. That the sooner this is resolved, the sooner his son gets his name back. And the legal response to the online chaos has escalated in a second way. Russell Latino, a Mississippi attorney who also owns a nonprofit news organization, announced in a series of posts that he represents the family of another Coast teenager, a friend of Nolan's, who is receiving death threats. Latino said that family is preparing to file defamation lawsuits. Reporting also indicates a New Orleans-based rapper and social media personality may have been served a cease and desist connected to claims made about the case. That's the shift worth registering. This has moved past the point where a family's lawyer issues a statement asking people to be responsible. Formal legal instruments are now being aimed at content creators, and there's a reason creators become targets in a way that ordinary people posting opinions don't. Someone with hundreds of thousands of followers isn't sharing a theory with friends at a bar. They're distributing claims at industrial scale about real people who haven't been charged with anything. When distribution crosses from opinion into specific factual assertions that turn out to be false, that's where legal exposure begins. Even Nancy Grace, who covered the case on her television series and pushed hard on why the independent autopsy didn't produce findings consistent with drowning, drew a line most creators haven't. She said she believed authorities jumped the gun by declaring no foul play early. She said she suspects foul play, and then she explicitly said she was not calling it a homicide. That qualifier is the difference between commentary and a lawsuit. Meanwhile, the raw material for speculation keeps arriving. Just this weekend, new footage surfaced from Horn Island, shot on the 4th of July, appearing to show the boat connected to that day. Whether it adds anything investigators don't already have is unknown. They've had access to phones, video, and dozens of witness interviews for weeks. Which brings us back to the thing Crump has raised that hasn't been resolved by anyone. He has said that students recorded an altercation on the boats that day, describing it as Nolan and another person yelling at each other. And he has said that when Nolan's friends left the island, they took his phone with them. When the family eventually got that phone back, according to Crump, messages had been deleted. Deleted messages. A missing phone. A phone thrown from a car window. 3 cases. 3 phones. 3 families who say the digital record of their son's last hours came back to them incomplete. Or didn't come back at all. Crump has said the shoe is about to drop. So let's do the count. The one from the top of this video. 3 arrests across 3 cases. In Texas, 2. Lucas Roper and a juvenile, both charged with tampering with physical evidence. Roper now indicted by a grand jury on that charge. In Kentucky, 1. Bryce Chestnut, tampering with physical evidence. In court on the 12th of August. That's 3, which means Mississippi is 0. 0 arrests in the death investigation of Nolan Wells, a completed state autopsy, a completed independent autopsy, around 60 witnesses interviewed, coordination with the FBI, the Coast Guard and the Department of Marine Resources involved in the original search. $175,000 in reward money, the largest fund attached to any of these 3 cases by a wide margin. National television coverage for a month straight. Ben Crump, the National Urban League, and a legal team running oceanic engineering analysis, and not one person arrested in connection with how that 18-year-old died. But here's the part I told you would change the shape of this. There have been arrests connected to Nolan Wells' case. They're just not for his death. Court documents show a man from California, Joseph Dumars, was arrested for making a threat on social media toward Chancery Court Judge Ashley Cole. Judge Cole is the mother of one of Nolan's friends. Separate reporting indicates a Sacramento man was arrested over violent threats linked to the case. Read that again. The only arrests that carry Nolan Wells' name are arrests of strangers, people with no connection to Horn Island, no connection to that boat, no connection to that family, for threatening the people connected to the investigation. A month of national attention, a finished autopsy, the biggest reward fund in the country, and the only handcuffs that have closed in Mississippi closed on people who threatened a judge. 3 fundamentally different events, 3 states, 3 unconnected agencies, with 3 separate command structures and 3 separate cultures. Whether the thread running through them is a genuine pattern in how these cases get handled, or an attorney building a larger platform by combining separate stories, is exactly the kind of question reasonable people can land on differently without either of them being dishonest.
His mother believes her child was murdered. We are still trying to get all the information, Attorney DeRay and I, but she does not believe her son unforced went into a lake a high school swimmer and drowned, she just isn't accepting that. And she has a right as a parent to question that. As it relates to Tyler Smith, we're going to have more information coming forward because of the hard work of his mother and grandmother, and we think the shoe is about to drop on that. And we're going to meet with the district attorney. We haven't yet, but we're going to meet with them because people are starting to come forward. And I again thank the parents of Nolan Wells because people are coming forward in their case. That's inspiring people to come forward in Tyler Smith's case as well. So thank you all for coming forward.
What the Nashville stage does establish is narrower, and it rests on facts nobody disputes. 3 18-year-old black men died within 3 months. In all 3, the people present did not immediately report what happened. In all 3, a phone became a point of contention. In 2 of the 3, the official ruling arrived quickly. And in all 3, the families believe it, arrived with less scrutiny than the circumstances warranted. And in all 3, the total accountability produced so far amounts to charges for what people did after a young man died, not for the death. If all 3 of these cases eventually resolve completely differently from each other, does that undercut the pattern Crump is describing? Or does it just mean each case has to be judged on its own evidence? I want your honest take, not the easy one. To be clear about exactly where all 3 stand as of this recording, no one has been charged with homicide in any of these 3 cases, not one. Nolan Wells' state autopsy is complete and sealed pending grand jury review. His cause and manner of death have not been publicly established. Authorities have said they believe an accidental drowning is likely. The family's independent examination returned undetermined. No one has been arrested in connection with his death. Daniel Irving's death is officially ruled an accidental drowning. 2 people who were with him face tampering charges, and 1 has been indicted on that charge. Neither is accused of causing his death. Dallas authorities have said they do not currently suspect foul play. Tyler Smith's death is officially classified as a self-inflicted gunshot wound, disputed by his family. 1 person faces a tampering charge and is due in court on the 12th of August. He has not been accused of shooting anyone. Every allegation described in this video comes from arrest affidavits, police citations, court records, or public statements. Allegations are not convictions. Everyone named who has been charged is presumed innocent. Nolan Wells was 18, Daniel Irving was 18, Tyler Smith was 18. 3 young men who went out with friends on ordinary days, a boat trip, a lake, a holiday night, and didn't come home the way everyone around them assumed they would. Somewhere in Mississippi right now, a finished autopsy report sits sealed, waiting on a grand jury that hasn't convened. Somewhere in Texas, a 19-year-old moves through a legal process that a mother has already called partial justice. And somewhere in Kentucky, a grandmother is holding on to a single mismatched shell casing, hoping it's enough to force somebody to ask the question properly. Nobody knows how these 3 cases end. Not this channel, not the commentators, not the families. What we do know is that 3 separate tragedies in 3 separate states produced 3 families who found each other, stood on the same stage, and said in one voice that silence is not an answer. 3 mothers and grandmothers, 3 states, 3 sons who should still be here. And one afternoon in Nashville where their grief became something louder than any one family's silence could ever have been alone. Rest easy, Nolan. Rest easy, Daniel. Rest easy, Tyler. Subscribe to this channel and we'll keep following all 3 of these stories until there's real accountability in every one of them. And tell me honestly, which of these 3 families do you think gets a real answer first?